must warn you about something.
Warn me?
You may, by indiscretion, give the world occasion to talk about you.
This must stop. If you have any thought for me, you will give me back my peace.
There can be no peace for us. Only misery. My greatest happiness.
Oh, so this is love.
We are bound together by God, and this can only be broken by a crime against God.
Something's happened.
Not something, everything.
It would be a sin to help you destroy yourself.
Sensual desire indulged for its own sake is the misuse of something sacred.
The man who can't govern his wife's gone as far as he can go in government.
Anna isn't a criminal, but she broke the rules.
Leave.
Leave my life. She'll be ruined.
Do you think I would let you have my son? You are depraved. A woman without honor. And this is what you want. Do you know what you want?
Okay, so that should have been some of the trailer for Anna Karenina. This is the new film directed by Joe Wright, that we've mentioned already, who stars Keira Knightley as Anna Karenina, a wealthy, married aristocrat in, late 19th century Russia?
Yeah.
And she is going into Moscow or St. Petersburg? She's from St. Petersburg.
She's from St. Petersburg.
She's from St. Petersburg. She's going to Moscow, for some business. And she's while she's currently married to a high society figure played by Jude Law, she develops an attraction to another person, named Vronsky, who's played by Aaron Johnson, and they start to have a bit of an affair. And high society doesn't look highly on these two having this sort of relationship. And much drama ensues. That's all I have for the plot description of Anna Karenina. I guess, Mark Owen, what did you think of Anna Karenina?
Well, so, we're dramatizing a classic of Russian literature. This is Leo Tolstoy wrote this novel. And it's been dramatized in films several times. And I think the 1935 version with Greta Garbo is probably the most famous, but that was an awfully long time ago. And, how do you make a text like this fresh and new for a modern audience? And I think that director Joe Wright did a brilliant job of taking this sort of old text and sort of revitalizing it in this sort of singular vision that he has. I mean, he's essentially filmed the virtual entirety of the entire film on a soundstage in an old abandoned theater. And that kind of sounds like a bad idea. And, you'd think that would be really severely limiting in being able to dramatize this really dramatic story. But I thought, the way that he does it, it is sort of a set designer's dream. I mean, there's colors, costumes, the cinematography, the way that it sort of plays out is really brilliant. And I mean, I can get into sort of some of the scenes and stuff that I really liked a lot. But I mean, there were moments in this film that I literally almost held my breath. I thought that the way that it was dramatized was so impressive. And then the composer Dario Marinelli composed the score, and I think the score is beautiful. And the way that we kind of mentioned this in our questions, but the way that the music complements the visuals, I think it really served the drama. And this actually has the style of this film is so impressive that I haven't seen probably visuals this impressive since films of the past like Black Narcissus or The Red Shoes. And that's not praise that I bestow lightly. I realize that those are kind of classics of the film world. And I think this is one of those films that visually kind of meets those films. And dramatically, I think there are some sort of style choices that, again, we can probably get into it, that are a little bit different than maybe how the original book was portrayed. But overall, I really enjoyed this film, and I enjoyed what director Joe Wright kind of his envisioning of this novel.
Abe?
I thought that visually is very pleasing as well, and I always enjoy Joe Wright's incorporation of music, as the Atonement typewriter and Hannah just going through the shadows and stuff like that. But I thought the movie was really boring. I found it the first 30, 40 minutes to be pretty intriguing with the way that everything is set up. The ballroom dance scenes were spectacular. Again, I agree with Mark that the art designer and the visual designer must have had a field day. It was fantastic. And it's very creative. It's very well crafted. The movie revolves around what Mark had said, which is just a stage. And, it's very creative in the way that Joe Wright makes train sequences, makes, people entering different areas. He kind of gives you a different feel. If you go up into the rafters, that's kind of the streets of St. Petersburg and whatever else. But, again, it feels longer than the 2 hours that it is. And I think that's primarily because I have never read the book myself, but I would think that it would be a chore to read the book written by Leo Tolstoy. I'm sure it's great Russian literature, but after a while I was just thinking to myself, what's going on here, guys? Let's close this up. Let's wrap it up. And, it takes a while for it to do that. So overall, it was cinematically very beautiful and very visual. The visuals were nice to look at, but I wouldn't really recommend this to anybody unless they were like a huge literary nut.
Now, Abe, you've said a lot of silly things in the past, and
yes.
I've often just plain flat out disagreed with you on things, because oftentimes you are wrong. I mean, there's no way around it.
Whoa!
But today you've completely redeemed yourself, because
yes.
I kind of agree with everything you just said.
Yes.
I had a real tough time engaging myself in this film, and I really wanted to, because I do like Joe Wright, and I do like his work with Keira Knightley, and I do think Keira Knightley is quite good in this movie. I think a lot of people are quite good in this movie. I'll talk about who I don't think is quite good in this movie in a second when we get into it more, but I had a tough time engaging with the characters and the story. I feel like this really is a case of style over substance, and I wish it wasn't that way, but that's really the impression I took away. I think it's a fantastic production. I love the idea of placing it inside one theater. It's a really cool, ambitious idea for a film like this, of having it in one location and having it shot that way, with, exception of a few scenes where you're expanding outwards, but the production design, the costumes, the music, again, all these things are fantastic, yet it did feel like twice as long as it needed to be. And I had a really tough time getting involved with how the things were being presented beyond just the flash of the visuals.
So, one of the things that it is Leo Tolstoy's text.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a pretty faithful adaptation. So, to say it's style over substance, we are dramatizing this novel. So, I don't know if it's possible you don't like Leo Tolstoy's novel, but I thought it does dramatize her infidelity. It also dramatizes her brother, who is also is not true to his wife, and it contrasts those two stories and how the way people react to his story and then the way people react to her and the hypocrisy of that. I thought there was depth to it.
I totally don't disagree with that. There was the whole entire contrast between those two, the siblings and the high society stakes versus the dude over in Moscow. But
right,
I have no problem with this story. I was just like, this is really long, and this is just really taking me out of the movie.
I acknowledge that it has those things in it, but I don't think the film made it compelling to me. I feel like it glossed over certain aspects to make me involved with these characters. But I feel like it just addressed the fact that these things were happening, and hey, we can relate to these things because this thing's happening to these people, and these things happening to these people. But it didn't draw me in further to really get in line with what character motivations are. I wasn't involved in the way I would have liked to be, and I would say it's not the story. I've seen the Greta Garbo version. I feel like that I like that version. I know.
Right.
I feel like I'm more invested in that.
And that's
a better job.
And that's totally fair. Right. That, and also, to be honest, I haven't read the original text, so that's probably going to color my enjoyment, because if you have read the text, you may be looking for certain things that you expect in the movie that aren't there. And from what I understand, to be honest, I will admit that Keira Knightley is not the most likable heroine in this.
Oh, no.
I was watching her feeling like, oh my gosh, you really are cheating. You're not so great. And I actually felt sorry for Jude Law. I think that he seems like a pretty likable guy.
I have to tell you.
Yes.
I have to tell you, you behaved improperly today.
How was that?
By making plain your feeling when one of the riders fell. Your conduct was improper. It must not occur again. I have said it before. You will say my concern is unnecessary and ridiculous. You are my wife. I'm wrong to think that. Yes. Perhaps I was mistaken.
No.
And I don't think that's the feeling you're supposed to get from the original novel. I think you're supposed to feel like, oh my gosh, the hypocrisy. She's doing the same thing as her brother, but yet she's being chastised and her brother was not.
I think it's supposed to be more. I think it's supposed to be more shrouded in gray, and that's kind of the issue I had. Like I
perhaps, but that didn't bother me though. I mean, it's true. I didn't sympathize with Keira Knightley as much, and I did sympathize with Jude Law, and I do think that Jude Law is. I will say I do think that Keira Knightley is good in the role, but I don't think you sympathize with her as much as maybe you're supposed to. And I did like Jude Law a lot.
Going into the theme of that, I like Jude Law in this film, and I like the stance that his character takes, which is he's virtuous to both his family and to his occupation.
And we should clarify, just to people who we may have not been specific, Jude Law plays Karenina, who is supposed to be her stodgy husband. He is not playing the romantic man that she falls up with, which is kind of an interesting choice. Because you would, I mean, I don't know if it's just that Jude Law is getting older, or if maybe he decided, no, I'm going to kind of change it up a bit and play this role. But that's kind of an interesting choice for him to play that guy.
Which is something I find interesting because I think if Jude Law, if this was like 10 years ago, if this was like talented Mr. Ripley, Jude Law, he could have nailed the role that Aaron Johnson's supposed to play. Because Aaron Johnson was my main problem with the other problem I had with this movie.
I knew when you said you had a problem with one of the roles.
And again,
Kick-Ass.
Again, this is the second time this year that I haven't liked Kick-Ass in something, but he's
unrecognizable to me. I mean, I cannot believe that was the same guy. I don't know.
Kudos to him for having a great makeup department to be able to make him look different in every role he's in. But
and Savages. That's
the other film we're referring to. But yeah, but I mean, I like him as Kick-Ass, and I like him as John Lennon in Nowhere Boy. That's a good movie. I like him in a lot. But this movie, like, he's supposed to be this guy that's basically desirable to everybody, and I don't see that in him. I don't see that charisma, and he just to me, his look in this movie, he looked like 80s Nick Cage. Like, he had this weird hair thing going.
Arizona
Nick Cage. Like, that's what I was getting, and so it's just distracting me, and I know it's not like, I'm watching Keira Knightley pine over this guy as well as, what's her name, Alicia Vikander's character, who's also quite good. Alicia Vikander's character as the,
As Kitty?
As Kitty, yes, Princess Kitty.
Yeah.
Like, I liked her quite as well, but like...
Oh, and we also have to mention Domhnall Gleeson, who is the guy that plays the socially awkward guy that courts her.
I like that movie. I like that.
He's great. No, I'm telling you, that it's when you say style over substance, I'm thinking it's not, because there are all these other things that are going on. It's contrasting these different stories.
Yeah, Aaron is saying
there's about the
I'm saying that it just there's so much about that true love stuff, and there's so much about these characters, and they develop them very well. It's just really boring when you see the whole entire context of it. It's like, oh, I'm doing it for love. She's doing it for love. You don't know what love is. It's like, okay, I get it. I get what love does to you.
That's what I'm.
Let's just end the movie.
That's what I'm referring to as style.
Well, love was never a game to us. Here's an end to living in corners, existing day to day on lies.
Yes. Now we can be together.
How can we, Alexei?
Tell Karenina everything.
Do you think my husband will make you a present of me?
Leave him.
Leave him and be your mistress?
Yes. Run away.
I would never see my son again. The laws are made by husbands and fathers.
What then? I'll never forgive myself for your unhappiness.
Unhappiness? I'm like a starving beggar who's been given food. I unhappy. No. this is my happiness.
In terms of how I'm saying style over substance, I'm not saying the intent was to be here's style and here's the stuff. I'm saying that I feel like I got a better impression of the style in this movie because it's very much there, and the substance didn't feel like it was there for me.
Mm-hmm. But, I like... Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the style things.
Okay.
I like that scene where they're ballroom dancing and the people are frozen in time, right. And then as they come up... it's very artificial. It's very artificial, and that's the point. It's all on a stage, and they make no bones about the fact that they are on a stage. And they dance up to the people, they're frozen in time, and then as they pass by them, then they begin to move. But I kind of... Oh, there was another scene, too, where they're walking with these clerks, and they're sitting in a room, and they're, stamping their, stamps, and it's almost like the beat of the stamp is like music. But I liked all of those scenes. I kind of like...
I like those things, too, and those, and the stamping, it's just, those things... They happen, and they're like, yeah, that's the movie I want. I was watching the movie, and that's like the first 30, 40 minutes that Abe was talking about, where I'm engaged with it. I'm liking the style.
Exactly.
I'm seeing where these characters are going, and I'm like, all right, this is turning into something cool. And then it just kind of kept going without me getting further engaged with what's going on.
But no, there was a certain point where I was like, oh, this is a perfect ending to the film. It's where it seems like there's a climax here with the three characters, three main leads, and then it goes on for another 40 minutes at least, and I was just thinking to myself, this is really long. This is something that's really taking me out of this movie, enjoyment of this movie, because you can only play up that visual and stylistic sense so long until it fades to nothing.
It is Leo Tolstoy's novel, so
I don't fault it.
To some extent, you may be having the problem with the actual story.
The actual text of the Tolstoy. Again, I think that it'd be a chore to read. If I was assigned to it in an English class in college, I probably would have liked this book.
Right, and that's another thing that I kind of give director Joe Wright credit for, is he's taken a novel that's quite long and ponderous and kind of condensed it down to a manageable 2-hour length. It's barely over 2 hours. And that's not easy to do. And in your case, you guys didn't really respond to it as much because you thought it was a little bit more just visual. But I did. I actually thought he did a good job of condensing this thing. And again, I'm not saying this is the definitive Anna Karenina. There have been lots of versions of it. But I thought that in this day and age, we're in 2012, and you're doing a novel that has been around forever. I think he actually took his vision and did a really good job of bringing something new and fresh to it. I guess I appreciated that.
He certainly gets credit for me for taking a Tolstoy novel and making it into a just over 2-hour film. That's for sure. And I didn't walk into the film thinking, oh man, Joe Wright's really gonna make this a entertaining laugh riot or anything like that. I knew the story I was getting into. It is, it is a 19th century Russian novel. It is going to be very doom and gloomy, but
and full of high society.
But I can't give credit to the movie for not being more boring than I thought it was at the same time. I'm playing light with that, but it's still. It's not necessarily the story. Again, I've seen another version of the story, and I did like that version a lot more. But it's just this movie didn't connect with me in the way I wish it could have, and there's so much here that I like about it that I really wish it did, because then I'd be able to appreciate it on the whole more.
Mm-hmm. Man, in terms of the acting, everybody was pretty fun. Even Keira Knightley's, her on-screen brother, even though he's this huge philanderer, he's a funny guy.
He was great.
Overall acting was pretty good.
And Kelly MacDonald as
it's great. There's a great cast here. I really like the cat. Kelly MacDonald. It's not I'm certainly not shunning the movie horribly. I think there's still plenty to admire, and I'm sure other people will appreciate this movie more than I have. It's not like I'm saying forget about this movie, but I would not I'm not the one that's going to be saying you should race out to see Anna Karenina, but I will be happy to praise many aspects about it. And you do. Sure. There is a great cast here. There's a lot of great production values, great costumes. If Les Mis wasn't coming out, I'm sure this would hands down win Best Production Design and Costumes.
I thought about that too. I was I wonder if the release date is I can't believe we were up against Les Mis, man.
I really, another thing too is, I really like Keira Knightley and period pieces. Like, I feel like those two things go together perfectly. So, like, I'm not sure how I feel about Keira Knightley in modern. I haven't seen Seeking a Friend for the End of the World yet. So
the one example.
she was in Bend It Like Beckham too. That's more modern.
Okay,
well, that one was cool because
Right, but I really do like the Duchess and Atonement and Pride and Prejudice. I really do like her in these kind of roles, and I feel like she does have this quality to her that almost suits any age. She's able to play these like women of the past convincingly, and she doesn't seem like an anachronism that some actresses might not be able to portray.
Right.
But anyway, no. So I probably was already walking into this film kind of already ready to love it. But the thing is, I had high expectations, and it met them for me. I really loved it.
Well, I mean, I also appreciate Pride and Prejudice and Atonement. I've already said I really love Atonement quite a bit. Like, I'm 2 for 2 with Joe Wright, Keira Knightley movies. So, like, I wasn't walking into this thinking, I don't know about this. Like, Hannah was one of my big. I mean, it's not obviously not like Hannah, but a previous Joe Wright film was one of my favorite movies of that year, and so was Atonement for whenever. 2008.
Right. You like the director.
Yeah, so I was certainly going into it, not necessarily expecting, but hoping I would really like it. And again, I didn't come away with that, but I do appreciate lots about it, and so it's well wishes to wherever they do next.
Right.
And I'm curious to see if he continues to work with Keira Knightley on some other future project, whether it be a period film or not. But I mean, yeah, this one just didn't get to me as much as I would have liked it to.
Pretty much there. I guess we can go to
our rating. Any other thoughts before we? All right, let's get to our rating of the film. Then each week on Out Now with Aaron and Abe, we try to rate films based on when we think you should go and see them, and our scale for that goes from IMAX to theater to dollar theater, Netflix, HBO, TV, or just kind of forget about it. Mark, where would you put it on that scale?
I give it IMAX. I liked it a lot.
Abe?
I'd say Netflix.
So low.
It's not as low as HBO or regular TV.
You have to admit, though, the production design is not going to serve on a little screen.
I'm not disagreeing with you. It's beautiful and stuff like that, but it's just, again, if you're going to spend 2 hours watching this movie and you're not into it after the 45th minute, you're going to waste your time in the theater.
I'm not going to call it a waste. I am going to agree with you. I would give it a Netflix rating, but I do think there's a lot to appreciate in watching the movie. So certainly a high definition Netflix viewing would do this film well.
Yeah.